Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lost Sheep Podcast. I'm Nazari Pangal, here with
Cole Bissett
and
Evan Aber.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for episode number 40. I point over that way if you're on YouTube because we have our board right there that we now can plan things out, which looks very neat and nice. And according to our board, it says that I'm supposed to plug here at the beginning, guys. So I shall plug. Please, if you are listening on or watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment if you'd like. If you're listening on podcast, wherever it might be, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, we're probably there wherever you are. Well, obviously we're there if you're listening. But please follow us on that. Leave a review. Help us to share this podcast in whatever way. And we are hoping next week we will be dropping a mailbag episode, which means we'll be answering your guys' questions. We currently have 2 questions so far that have come from our Instagram poll. So if you want to reach out to us in any way, whether it's the YouTube comment section, the Instagram DMs, whatever way you would like, we need some more questions. That'll be a very, very fun episode. And don't forget about the merch. We've got t-shirts. We've got wristbands. I believe that is all. So, guys, I know Evan is back. He was not here last week, so we went back to the original.
Yes.
But Evan, how was it? You were sick. Are you feeling better? How's it going, sir?
Yeah, feeling a lot better. I was literally dying of the plague. Not really. I've had when I went back home for the holidays, I was having like balance issues and like really bad motion sickness. And so my mom had said in passing, like, oh, you should go get covered for like an ear infection, see if you have something. So I started feeling bad last week and went to student health and had the flu, which, everybody's getting now because it's just that time of year. But the lady looked in my ears and she was like, man, these are mad infected. So, was feeling pretty double sick, but happy to be back and very sad I missed an episode, but yeah, happy to be back. Very excited.
Cole, are you over your sickness? It's been like 2 weeks. He still coughs, ladies and gentlemen. So
his average screen time is actually lower than mine, and I missed a whole episode because of that one episode where he just left and blew his nose for like an hour.
It's funny because I went back and watched that episode, and I literally wasn't in the episode for like half of it. I was just listening. It's just you guys, and so like I ended up getting in what I wanted to say in the next episode because we talked about it. So that was really nice. Shoot, I was actually going to say something. So for the mailbag episode, if you are at Sabin and you're around here, I'm planning on dropping a bowl off and just putting it in the center of Sabin, and it'll just be like I'll put like a candy bowl or something beside it to entice people because food works. And so it'll be like take one and write a question. And so if you have the time of day and literally just want to ask us any question, that'd be awesome. They will remain anonymous, so don't worry about names being listed or anything. We'll keep it anonymous for everyone's privacy. Some questions may be personal, we understand it, and we're excited to break it down. For the questions we've already gotten, I'm hyped. The 2 questions are really good, and I'm excited to talk about it for sure. But yeah, you can reach out to us on Instagram. You can comment on this post if you want to comment your question. You're totally welcome to do that also. But yeah.
We have a very exciting update, ladies and gentlemen. So obviously, a couple weeks ago, we signed Evan on to the podcast. We were planning on having to do virtual with Evan because he was going to graduate. He is still graduating, undergraduate, but was going to go get a job. But since then, Evan has had a change of heart, so to say. Evan was going to provide this awesome update.
Yeah, so I think the plan was when I first signed on to do this semester and then past this semester kind of, come back and do the virtual like I did for a few episodes over the break. But obviously, plans change. God has a sense of humor. So over the break, I decided that I was going to apply for grad school. So I did that, and just last week got fantastic news that I'll be attending, and I have the opportunity to go. So put in my deposit, and I'll be back at Alabama to get my MBA for another 2 years, which gives me a really great opportunity. We were just discussing this, to see episode 100, see episode, I don't know, that's like a long way. We'll see episode 150 in person, maybe. So I'm really excited. I'm super excited to be able to just continue with, doing our Bible study, continue to be in this community, continue to be in such a cool place as Tuscaloosa. I think 3 years is too short to be in a place like this, just because it's starting to feel like home. But I'm super hyped, super hyped to be back, and really excited to have the opportunity to go and study at Culver House and see what it's like over there. So
what's comedic about this whole thing actually is Evan is now going to be physically here for longer than Nazario is, which is really sad, because now Nazario is going to be gone first. So he's going to be here for a lot longer. You're going to see a lot more of Evan, which is great. We'd love to have him on. Nazario will be here for the extent of his time, and then he'll be joining virtually. We hope to continue this as long as we possibly can, because why not? This is one of my favorite parts of the week, because it's a chance for me to get all the theological, stuff I want to talk about throughout the week out, because it's just, it's so fun just to be able to talk to some guys and just go. Like, it's nice, for sure. Now, Nazario, this is what I'm talking about. It's nice to be able to talk to people. Nazario yesterday really was in a mood, and he tends to be in a mood every once in a while where he's like really psychologically trying to get into your head. And yesterday was one of those days, and it's great that he's a psychology major. It's pretty terrible for me sometimes because I have to experience his.
Yeah, I'm enjoying not living with him.
Yes.
From what you've said.
It gets a little crazy, Your brain wants to go some ways, and then he's trying to just argue the other side for argument's sake, because that's just who he is. Yesterday was one of his argument for argument's sake days, and it was a really good question, and we figured we'd start it off because Evan has never heard the question, and we want to know your opinion on it. So,
well, first off, we had discipleship, us three right here on Tuesday. Evan, if you guys didn't know, is our discipler, our leader, our former.
Pretty sure that's been brought up, right?
Yeah. But I mean, people haven't listened.
Fair.
But on Tuesday, we went over our goals that we had for this college year, and so.
Which wait a second. Actually, Nazario did a pretty good job of remembering what your goals were. Less so from Cole, significantly.
I don't know. Did I remember any of them?
I don't think so.
I think I hit all of them though. Yeah, unintentionally.
Both on track.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyways, it just made me reconsider that I need to pay a little bit more attention in this one psychology class. And so yesterday I went to this class and I closed my computer and I listened to the lecture the whole time, and it was great. And I was very thankful afterwards that I did that, because I actually got to learn about this, got this great question, just a great discussion. So we were talking, we had to read from, a little excerpt from William James, who was a late 19th century, early 20th century psychologist. And so it is about emotion, Evan, okay? And so the question is, what comes first, your emotion or your bodily reactions? Which one comes first?
And we've talked about this in discipleship recently.
Does your emotions cause your bodily reactions, or do your bodily reactions cause you to feel your emotions? There's a lot of different ways and things that you have to try to decipher, define for how you think of it. But
although I really do feel like you've answered this question before.
Yeah, I want to say, my first instinct from a that was bad. That was a stutter. From a biology perspective is I would have to go with bodily emotions. Right? So
bodily reactions or emotions?
Yeah. Bodily reactions.
Okay. Our first?
Yeah. So take for instance, and I'm going to use this example because I know I've used this example a lot with you, and we got to focus on not making this a 40-minute segment. But just as a preface, we sat down to do the podcast, and I think that was probably at 10:20, and we are 10 minutes into the podcast, and it's now 11:03. So a lot of yapping this morning. But I think what I always think of as food is such a powerful driver of motivation. or of emotion for me. And so, like good food, bad food, etc. And so I have to taste that before I'm eliciting an emotional response, right? So the biological perspective of, oh yes, this ice cream tastes like, Rocky Road. This ice cream tastes like mint chocolate chip, which is a bodily function and a bodily response, comes massively before the emotion. Now, if we're talking about reacting...
Question for that part real quick.
I have
Yeah.
a question on that too.
part. So, yes, you have to eat it, right? But then, is it your emotion that makes you react in a way that this tastes good? Or is it tasting good that makes you have the emotion of that you're happy about it?
I would definitely say tasting good.
Yes.
Because, so if I was blindfolded, let's say, research experiment, right? If I'm blindfolded and I don't know the flavor of the ice cream, and, I'm not a huge Rocky Road guy. I don't like nuts in my ice cream all that much. But, I do really like mint chocolate chip, and I love a good, Dutch chocolate ice cream. So, if you gave me 3 things, it's okay, here's a spoon of this, and I'm blindfolded. Here's a spoon of this, and, I don't know what it is. That emotion, that happiness is not going to hit me until oh yeah, this is mint chocolate chip. And I have to, taste that. Chemoreceptors have to be active on my tongue. They have to, neuronically fire to my brain to send signals. And then after that, my brain is okay, this is what that tastes like. And then my brain sends those outward messages to my limbic system, and it's an emotional response, right? So that's what I get that from. What was yours? Yeah.
So my question is, okay, we're talking about food, right? And you feel the emotion after you eat it. I get what you're saying about that. If it's good food, you're gonna feel good. If it's bad food,
Less,
bad in a sense of it doesn't taste good, you're
Or
not
not
feel.
tiered
Yeah.
yeah.
But isn't it the initial curiosity that makes you want to get that taste? So wouldn't you be having that emotion first?
Yeah, but I would say curiosity, any emotion prior to that is not an emotion associated with that event.
But it makes you want to taste it.
But it's not associated with that event. It's not
How?
associated with that action. If I have curiosity about how a sword feels when it hits my leg, right? That curiosity is not associated with that action of the sword hitting my leg, because I don't think if anybody knew, right? Well, and we do, but if you knew about how a knife felt when it hit your leg, that it's going to cut you and cause pain, you wouldn't be curious about it, right? The curious is more about the intellectual stimulus than it is about the actual event occurring.
Okay. Well, what about your survival instinct just to eat food? Wouldn't you be feeling that emotion first too?
Yeah, and I think that would be a good example for if I was surviving, right? But I'm not eating ice cream to survive, right? Usually if I'm eating food to survive, it's not food that's gonna elicit happiness in me, right?
I mean, your sandwich this morning for breakfast, were you not excited to eat that and enjoyed it and made you feel good that it tasted good, even though you just woke up in the morning, you needed food, which is technically your survival instinct that you need food?
Yeah, but I was happy after I ate the sandwich, not before.
See, it's very interesting because I get your point, but I also feel for me, I'm on the side of I'm just gonna say where I'm standing on this conversation.
Shocking.
I'm a yes. I think you do have the emotions
comes
first. I think the
You
emotion.
think the emotion comes
Yes, because I think no matter what, your brain, we have these choices, we have these decisions we make in our day-to-day lives, and I think our brain, even though you might have those, and we talked to Austin about this, and his point makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think other than reflex reactions, in the doctor's office when they hit your knee and your leg just does this,
Mm-hmm.
that's your emotion doesn't have any control of that. Your body just does it because it has to,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that's different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, if we're talking about any decision you're making throughout your day, I think you do have to feel something initially and that causes you to make that decision. Now, there's different ways you handle those emotions, but I still do think the emotion comes first.
Well, I think if you break it down into emotion, don't put your hands on the table.
Yeah, fair.
Emotion or decision, right? I would agree with you. Emotion comes before, but I think if we split down into emotional and biological reaction, then like, and this is where I'm going to say I do have a whole degree in biology at this point, nearly, minus 12 credits. But our bodies, like emotion is produced in the limbic system. And so we have to have a whole response of waterfall chemical receptors and kinases and all this stuff that cascades into our limbic system in order to elicit emotion. And that's based on different hormones and different things like that, right? And so we actually, as a matter of fact, we do have a biological response before the emotion. That's like a fact. But I think when you look at it, emotion versus decision, I would be firmly, which I think is a more interesting question, I would be firmly in the camp of, I agree, I think emotion comes first and then you make the decision. Because how many times do we struggle to, and I know we've talked about this in discipleship, but how many times a day do we struggle to divorce that, making a logical decision versus making a decision that's driven by emotion? Because, as humans, we're not driven primarily by I need to survive and reproduce and like live. We're driven by, does this make me happy or does this make me not happy?
Which it could go into a whole other conversation that we're not going to have about. I would say, like evolutionary mindset behind it, which is what you talk about with surviving and reproducing. This animalistic mindset behind it, and why humans are so different, because they don't have that. We don't live just for that. But yeah, if your mind's in a blender, that's okay. It's good to think about. It's good to hear these things. And I'm stopping this conversation because it would go on and on.
You're thinking
for sure. But
I can have a good.
I am in the middle right here, so I see like both sides. I don't think I have like a definitive. Like I could very much argue for both sides. Kind of like the Super Bowl, which is coming up on Sunday. Like I could argue for both the Chiefs and the Eagles to win this game. But
but no one wants to. No one wants to. Anyway,
besides the point, we are going to get into our quote for today. This actually comes from Focus Equip. I was reading the discipleship article, and I just love this quote. It is from the one, the only Pope Francis, and I'm looking over this one because this is where it is. The quote for this week: "God never tires of forgiving us. We are the ones who tire of seeking His mercy." I'll read that one more time. And then someone indicate to me who wants to start. God never tires of forgiving us. We are the ones who tire of seeking His mercy. And Evan is the lucky winner. Evan, kick us off with this wonderful quote from Pope Francis.
So I'm going to be actually pretty quiet today, I think, because while I love this quote, and it's a fantastic quote, my search talk is in a week,
it's on this
in a couple days, and I'm actually giving a search talk on God's loving mercy.
Pretty,
So I don't want to because I know a lot of what I'm going to say is going to be versed in that talk, so I'm going to try to keep my saying to a minimum. But this is one of those things that we don't think about as humans, right? We, being finite beings, discuss God sometimes like He is also a finite being, and that's a failing we have, right? Putting limitations on God is something that we often discuss. And again, I know we've discussed before, like how dangerous that can be for us as humans. But, when we put a limit on God's mercy, when we put a limit on God's forgiveness, is when we start to come up with trouble of making ourselves into God. And I think a lot of the sin that we fall into as humans derives itself from kind of this belief that God is finite. We can think of a lot of things, right? Like if you have vanity, or if you, fall into this, and this is something I can call myself out, but like if you fall into this belief that like you control your destiny, right? God's will is up to you, right? Like that's when you begin to fall into these pitfalls of the devil. And those all come from, this belief in our brains that God has no control here. God is finite. God is a heavenly divine being and does not have existence here on this mortal plane, which is false. I think the second thing, because that goes for kind of the front half of God never tires of forgiving us. The second bit, we are the ones who tire of seeking His mercy, equally as important, right? forget what scene it is, but it was a woman. It was some quote about like, ask tirelessly, and when you're tired, keep asking for God to give you the strength or something. And I think, we get tired. Like, again, we're humans. We're not God. We get tired. We get exhausted from everyday things. I was just complaining to y'all about, having to go to lab this week and all this stuff. It's hot and humid outside. I walked here from my house, I'm, dripping sweat. I'm tired. I like plop myself down in the chair. I was like, man, it's sticky out there, and I'm tired of it. And it's February. But we get tired. We get exhausted of doing all this stuff and the day-to-day and the motions. And so it's so important for us to continue that sole position of asking for God's mercy, but also continuing to ask for God's strength, to ask for that mercy, which sounds cockeyed, but is important, that we continually come to him and say, like, hey, I need this strength. I need this resolve so that I can continue to ask that you, save me, that you continue to give me your mercy and your blessings. I think a lot of it boils down to us. God's always going to give us his 100%. A lot of it boils down to us giving him our 100%.
I like it. Part of me really kind of wants to move past the first part of this quote. I think God never tires of... What am I doing?
Don't hit the table.
Oh, my bad. It shouldn't actually be that bad with the stand there. It doesn't sound as bad anymore, so you might be all right. But part of me really wants to move past the first half of this quote, because I think through all the podcasts we've had and everything, I think we've established, we know God's never going to stop forgiving us, right? Because we've talked about the bridge, the chasm, the dilemma. We've talked about all of this over and over and over again. So I think we've got a good grasp and a good understanding of the first half. So I want to plug this second half. I want to talk about it a little more. We are the ones We are the ones who tire seeking his mercy, right? And so, in recent episodes, maybe 2 or 3 episodes, we talked about humility. And I kind of want to almost hop back to it. But first, this conversation about emotion is really, I kind of want to sidebar it into this. So let's talk about emotion, right? Would you guys both say that we experience empathy towards God? Because I'm curious. I don't know. I'm not 100. I haven't thought this through 100%, but this is a thought in my brain that's just there, and I'm curious.
I would say that I have. I don't know if that is technically the should you?
Not sympathy, empathy.
Wait, okay.
I believe so. Yes.
Not from I'm not a serial killer. What is empathy?
Do you want me to define it?
Yeah.
I'll define it. So Webster. I actually was ready for this. So Webster...
I don't know why I didn't just do it before.
Sorry. Yeah, my bad. I love to define things. So what is empathy?
It's just
Literally, I do it every episode. I like to when we're talking about something, I like to
podcast and label it what is.
Yeah, what is. So what is empathy? Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Okay? Now, I know this is difficult.
It puts a different spin on it, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
I know this is difficult because we never fully understand God, but can we still feel empathy towards him?
I think because of the incarnation that we definitely can, because if Jesus can say, because he is human while also being fully God, can now empathize with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with everything that we go as humans, then we have to be able to do that back if he is human.
Is that vice versa?
With that aspect, yes, 100%, and that's why I think we can be empathetic towards how much pain he must have felt going through the passion, not just because of the physical pain, but because of the fact that the people around him were completely ridiculing him. It's like literally walking through the passion. Put yourself as the person Jesus going through the passion, but picture all the people around you being your family members that you love, being your best friends, because that's how it felt for Jesus. That's how it is for Jesus. Those are his creations. Those are his family members. So, yes, definitely towards that. Now, the Almighty Father, the Holy Spirit, that I don't know if I can fully answer if we can be empathetic towards those two persons of the Trinity. That would be very interesting. I don't know.
That is kind of what I'm leaning towards, right? Because in your definition of empathy, right, to be able to see like a person's perspective, almost like we're not going to ever see God's perspective. And so I think the same thing. I think sympathy and empathy are pretty closely linked here, with how we're discussing them. But I always, so yeah, in that case, I would have a hard time, God the Father, God the Holy Spirit, having empathy with them. There's this scene. Have y'all seen The Passion?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Love it.
There's this scene in The Passion where after the scourging at the pillar, where it goes into a drone shot, and like you see down on, like, it's directly centered on the pillar, and the pillar is just this white wafer, and like Christ is, oh man, I spoiled the story. Christ is like chained to it. And so what I always think of now as a mental image, because I just watched that for the first time last Triduum, is when the priest holds up the host in the middle of Mass at the elevation. I always think of that shot where like the pillar is this perfectly white circle and it's covered in Christ's blood, and like he's splayed out and he's on the ground and his back is laid open from the lashes, but yet like there's this perfectly white circle. And so it's always what I think of. And I think like in that case, because of his humanity, because, he has that emotion, because he has that physical pain, like, that's when we can empathize. I think it becomes harder, obviously, when, because Christ, because God in the form of the Father has never had a physical body, it becomes harder to say, I empathize with him, because, in that case, like, right, we don't know what he's thinking. We can't understand him. I would also say it's nigh upon impossible to do that if we accept the Trinity as a true mystery, because as a true mystery, we can't understand it, hence a true mystery. And so, like, if we can't understand something, therefore we can't empathize. So as a whole, the Trinity could be argued for that we should not be able to empathize with it.
But if you're going to say that, I would say that, do you ever understand fully everything with anybody else to be able to empathize with them? So, you know what I mean? Like, I can never fully understand what you're going through either, but I don't think that means that I can't empathize with you at all.
Yeah, but I think it needs to be over 50. Like, if we had a qualm or a beef or something, right? Like, we would have a discussion, I'd explain my side, you'd explain your side. Same goes for you, Cole, I'm sure, right? We'd explain, we'd communicate with each other. And, I think that area of understanding is around 75%. Because you're never going to know, like, okay, this is exactly what he's feeling at this moment. Like, you can't be inside my head. So I think, like, that understanding, it's some measure of understanding with each other, not full understanding. Because, again, like, even with, can you empathize with yourself, right? Wow, how did this episode get so psychological?
I love it. This is great.
Can you empathize with yourself, right? Like, at one point in your life, do you understand yourself fully, or understand yourself enough to empathize with yourself? Like, in that case, like, yeah, we can ask that question. Like, when are we at a point in our lives where we understand ourselves? And then let's tie it in here, right? Like, if we can't understand ourselves, right? Again, ask for God's mercy. Like, hey, I don't even know, like, why I'm here, right? I don't know your will. We return to being human. I don't know what the plan is for me. I need your help. Guy who literally knows the entirety of the universe and the inside and outside of my heart, mind, and soul. Like, oftentimes, there are places where we don't understand ourselves, but rather God is going to understand ourselves better than we ever could. But I mean, yeah, I think it's hard to say like we empathize with God. I think that would be a hard thing to say. Yeah.
But I think to add on to it real quick, before I get back to you, I don't think that God doesn't want us to be able to empathize with them, at least on some level. because God wants to be a God, like God is a God that wants to be completely part of our lives, and he is a personal God. He is not, as some people may try to say, like just ruling over everything, just seeing over everything, but doesn't actually take part in any of his followers' lives. No, he wants to be a part of our lives, and he knows us more than anyone else, as you said. So he knows that we need to be able to understand him on some level and to be able to empathize with him on some level, which is why he gives us these awesome reveals of part of his character, right? And it's why we're able to say God the Father. Well, when we say God the Father, when we hear Father, that gives us some type of understanding, some type of empathy, that now we have a great image and symbol to be, okay, I can get an image of, now I know part, never fully the mystery, right? But now I have something, okay, God is a Father, right? And so, and then the movie with the Passion, that's putting into this like clear image of what the Passion was really like. So it's just, yes, never going to fully understand, always a mystery, but still God wants to be personal. So he gives us little reveals of his character so that we can have some type of empathy with him.
And real fast, just as a shout, right? The movies, the media we discussed, like The Passion, I'm sure y'all have talked about The Chosen before. Like, while good sources, right? Like, not produced by the church. Mm-hmm. So, obviously, there's going to be maybe some dogma and some theology that are a little bit askew there, but we use them as good sources, as good, as good images of what we can see today. So,
I mean, the morality and general message with both of them are still very excellent, and they're still trying to portray a really good message. But yeah, so you may be asking, why am I bringing this up? Yada, yada, yada. So first of all, I referenced humility again, right? I think in order to experience mercy, I think you need to have a couple things, right? Not experience it, maybe seek it. In order to want to seek out God's mercy, I think you need to have two things. First is humility. It goes back to the realization of personhood. You have to first realize your humanity in order to fully understand that you need God's mercy. I think that comes first. And so realization of personhood through humility, I think, is number one, right? And so there's two things, and the second one was empathy. And I wrote down empathy versus sympathy. Now, this is a really good conversation. Empathy versus sympathy is a really good conversation. We talked about it in my honors class freshman year, and it's like the only lecture from that class that actually stuck. And that sounds terrible, but sitting there and listening to it, I was like, wow, I really like this lecture. Because normally they're pretty boring and pretty straightforward. And I was like, this is deep. I like it.
UH 100?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I know how to help lead students. I understand courage. I get these things. But this one right here, this conversation, is good. I had a conversation with my mom after talking about empathy and sympathy. I actually think you can't... I don't know how to say this because I don't also want to say something wrong. I don't think you can experience one of them 100% without the other. I think in order to have empathy, you first must be able to, at least in some sense, sympathize with the person, to have the want to have empathize with them.
Did you have the definition of sympathy?
Yeah, I was about to ask what's the definition of sympathy.
Let's pull up the definition.
Because
this is also our check for...
I think this is very interesting because we all would say, if someone asks, hey, do you know what sympathy is? You would be like, yes. You have an image of it, but no idea. Very, very hard to define.
It's a feeling of sorrow or compassion, and I want to focus on more the compassion. I feel like mixture of both.
Whole Merriam-Webster?
Sympathy is
reading from an infographic.
This is on the side. It's a feeling of sincere concern for someone who has experienced something difficult or painful. All right.
So I definitely feel sympathy for Christ.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, in order to feel empathy, I think you first have to develop the connection through sympathy. Right? And so I think, I'm going to be on the side, I think we do need to be empathetic towards Christ. Okay? And hear me out before,
this is our heresy block, so...
Yeah, if
we're
we
going
are
to anything that is against the Catholic Church,
we, correct us on anything. We are totally willing to take anything. We want to be in line with the church. And if we're saying something that's wrong, we're college students. We're not infallible. That would be crazy. But we say stupid things sometimes. So if we're wrong, reach out to us. Let us know. Then we can correct ourselves moving forward. So yes, we're not 100% perfect Catholic teaching.
We're gonna hire like a
when this goes somewhere, get somebody to like fact check us. But anyways,
get Sam in here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Actually, Sam would be really good. He's a good guess. Sam,
Continue.
All right. Anyways, I don't think empathy means 100%.
reveals.
100% understanding. I don't think it does. I think it means the ability to want to understand somebody a little more. The ability to try to understand somebody a little more. And so I think throughout the entirety of our faith, we're called to try to understand Christ on a deeper level, right? And we're never going to fully get there. Like you said, we're never going to fully get there, but we're constantly striving to build that understanding towards Christ. That's why we don't in our faith that's why we're not just Sunday Catholics. We're not going to Mass just for the weekend and that's it, right? We are attempting through the podcast to learn more about God. We're attempting through discipleship to now read a book and try to grow more in our knowledge that way. And so I think by doing all of these things, we are trying, in a sense, to empathize with Christ. We're trying to have the ability to understand him. But first, we would never have that empathy without the sympathy from the beginning when he showed us everything through his salvation history. And that whole story, we would never have these feelings or this drive or this want if he hadn't done everything before, if we hadn't seen everything before, if God hadn't sent his son to the world, we wouldn't even know Christ, right? And so I think sympathy came first, and I think empathy followed, and I think we're all called now to figure out a way, in a sense, to empathize with Christ more. And I think it's when we lose sight of that empathy is when we lose sight of seeking God's mercy, right? Because if we don't feel the empathy, then why would we want to seek the mercy to begin with if we don't want to understand Christ?
I could even say that, and I would agree with that a lot more than anything I said, but I would even agree to the point of trying to understand God 100% is prideful, because again that rolls back into who are we? We're humans, right? Who are we to understand this divine being who's out of time and space? And so thinking or
intention behind that. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because if you're wow, I am just in awe of God. All I want to do is just know more about him because he's so incredible. That's a good reason. But if you're obviously prideful about the way you go about that, so.
I can understand God.
Oh, wow, look at me.
Yeah,
I have this incredible understanding.
Yeah.
So
Posture. This is I'm going to say the statement and explain it, but posture of heart is important, and it's something that we've talked about before. But basically, this theory that any action we have has an inflection and a tone to it, right? And so posture of heart is the character you take on with any action or statement.
Yeah.
And so that kind of drives the intentionality behind our action, and is what kind of delineates gray areas from what they are as good or bad. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like to go off that, there's so many good things that someone could do with the wrong posture of heart. You could go volunteer at some place, and the entire time that you're giving away food at a food bank, so you could be, wow, this person's just horrible. In your mind, you'd be like, wow, I'm so thankful, I'm so much better than these. I feel like that's a Bible verse Jesus tells a story about someone having that type of mindset.
The Pharisees. Don't be like the Pharisees who pray in the temple.
And they're out on the corner saying that they're wow, thank you. Oh, it's the Jesus talking about two people that go to pray. There's the sinner who won't even get close to the temple. Yeah. He's forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. And then there's the Pharisee. I think he might be standing up. I don't know where he's at, but he's basically saying thank you, God, that I'm so much better than this sinner. So
thank you that I'm so rich. Thank you that I'm so in power. Yeah.
Exactly. So that posture of heart to be able to have your intentions right. Yeah. And I actually have a question for you guys that hopefully.
Can I say that real quick? Real quick. I'm not saying. I want to just emphasize this. I'm not saying that Christ is his whole ministry and his whole the crucifixion and everything is not his call for our sympathy towards him. I want to say that. I don't think God's not doing these things asking us to feel sorry for him. It's an example. Okay, so I just want to clarify that when I say
that first line.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to clarify that when I say we are feeling sympathy towards Christ first, that's human instinct. That's just our, reach, because it is a very sad story, and I think if you don't in a sense feel sorry for Christ, suffering on the cross, then there may be something
Yeah.
wrong, right? Like it's there, and we talk about intention and being pure of heart, and Christ is 100% pure of heart. His motivation is only to love. And so I just want to emphasize that when I say we are all going to experience that sympathy in order to experience the empathy first, I'm not saying Christ is asking us to feel sorry for him. He's just showing us to show love. The sympathy is just our natural human desire and want to comfort and want to, make somebody feel safe.
Yeah.
So yeah, just want to clarify that.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about that, you're going back to trying to understand God more. Obviously, you want to have the posture of heart to seek that right. But my question for you guys is, when attempting to try to understand God better, can we understand God better by simply understanding ourselves better and diving into ourselves?
It's a good question.
I like this question,
I do too.
and I think we're write it. Do you have it written down?
I do not have it written
Okay.
down.
Should
Write
this be like a
Write it down because I think this is gonna have to be another
part two?
another podcast. But write that down, one liner, and then we'll go next segment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, how much
And-
time are we at over there?
For 40 minutes.
Oh yeah, it's a long episode.
Can you repeat the question real fast?
It was, how much can we come to understand God more by simply diving into trying to understand ourselves better?
Can we? Yes or no?
Just
that'll
one
set up
liner?
that'll set up the next episode.
Can we understand God more by trying to understand ourselves
Yeah.
more?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go yes.
I'm a yes as well.
Okay.
It'd be devil's advocate
Sounds like,
over there and do
sounds like American Idol. I'm a yes as well.
You Howie over there?
Let me be what's his face, Simon Cowell. Is that the voice?
Yeah.
No.
Same thing. I mean,
Yeah,
they're all the same
he's
thing.
American
Game
Idol.
show. Whatever.
I think as a Trinitarian whole, no. I think Christ the Son, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, that was
Clarify that
a
way.
very long first section, but I think we hit a lot of different points right there.
That was
Very,
sweet.
very awesome.
Should we continue the quote next week?
Well,
because I feel like-
mailbag episodes.
It
so-
is.
Yeah, we got a mailbag next
Is that
week.
our podcast question for ourselves?
We can come back
Yeah.
to that. I don't know.
That should be the end of the mailbag episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe
It-
the beginning to get us
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
Just to get us in the mood, because that's going to take maybe.
That's
10,
going to take
15
15 minutes, yeah.
But moving on to our personal prayer practice. Last week, Evan was not here because he was suffering. We happened to talk about prayer.
I was praying through suffering.
Evan, were you praying through suffering during your sickness?
I was the worst symptom I had was when you're sick you get the body aches, right?
Yeah.
And I literally woke up Thursday morning and I could not move. It hurt to move. I just I laid in my bed and was a just empty stare. I felt terrible. But I was definitely praying through my suffering. Absolutely.
I totally can relate to that. Maybe not from last week through the sick symptoms, but yeah, no, terrible. Especially again, the reference I think we brought up when we were talking about it last week is this dude walks. I can hear him coming upstairs anytime he comes upstairs, and I'm dying in my bed, and you literally just hear that dunk, 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 just him waddling up the steps, and all of a sudden he gets to the top, and the door slowly opens, and he's got a rosary in his hand. And he's doesn't say anything else. He's like, you want to pray a rosary? Just like that. And I was I'm dying. I feel terrible. And I was like, why not? And so he sat outside of my room on the floor, and we just prayed a rosary. And I was laying in bed, dying, suffering. And
We
it was
also
awesome.
need to discuss Nazario's immune system real fast because he sits in the middle at pretty much every week.
Yeah, and he doesn't get sick.
And you had the flu for probably 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was probably contagious for, we didn't film a podcast, but you live with him. And I was at discipleship. I looked like pretty much crap that week. But the fact that this man has not caught anything. Shout out to your immune system.
He had a really bad, you got sick terribly bad before the last break. And he was sick for a month. It was bad.
All right, well, still shout out.
He didn't get the flu though.
Yeah,
So that's big. Your body rejects the flu.
We're gonna give him like a little cake, a tiny little cake,
Thank you.
a single
appreciate
candle, on
a
the top.
Twinkie or
Yeah,
something.
I like it.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, so praying through suffering. That was it was weirdly the coolest experience I had that week, and it was I don't know why, but him asking me that like made my week. Like it was awesome. I just sat there and I felt terrible. Like it was terrible. You should see my room. It was like my mom bought me like 3 24-packs of body armors to get down. Like so I would stay high. And so there's empty body armors everywhere. There's tissues all over. Like it looks like an infirmary in my room. And so I was sitting. It was by far one of the worst experiences with sickness I've ever had, and that like helped that week tremendously. So yeah, that was my praying through suffering. Maybe not from last week, but from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
just a reference to it.
Oh, I mean, I'm not gonna live up to that. It gets sick, as Evan said. But for me, I've been trying to do this through when we're working out. Cole and I have been working out a good amount, and that's like you are literally hurting your body to help it to build up, hopefully to get stronger. So praying through that has been pretty good. And then on Wednesday night, I was playing men's intramural basketball, and I get there late first off, and then I get in the game, and literally probably a minute, 2 minutes in, my shins just start killing me. And I've been feeling some shin pain from our last couple of basketball games, but this was just terrible shin splints. And I kid you not, near the end of the game, my feet were asleep. Like, I was playing basketball, and I was standing, and my feet were asleep. It was very odd, but it was quite brutal. And so actually, middle of the game, usually when you're playing a sport, it's kind of hard to pray during it. You're trying to focus, so you don't really think of it as much. But I was able to slow down. I think it was like before someone was shooting free throws, and I did like a little prayer through suffering through that. And just as Evan talked about with asking for strength, just asking for strength to try to finish the game because, I really cared about my teammates. I wanted to give them all I could to try to finish off the game. So that was my experience with praying through suffering. That was brutal. Shout out, you can also help other people praying through suffering. I know yesterday my girlfriend Caitlin was having not the best day, and I was able to pray for her through her suffering. So don't forget about praying for other people through their suffering. Just like I did with Cole with the rosary. Yeah, it helped him out. You never know what impact you can make. As he said, I didn't even know that.
So this week, also, did you win?
But I
Pray through Cole's suffering.
I think that if the shins weren't hurting, we could make a comeback. But
So this week, our personal prayer practice is kind of Lectio Divina, is what we're going to say. So meditating with Scripture. I'm a really big fan of who picked this? You?
You did, bro.
No, you did.
Alright.
We were talking about it.
I like this a lot. I love Lectio.
Actually, it was a tag team. I said we should do Scripture, and he said Lexio. So
I love doing Lectio. It's a great opportunity to kind of shake up your prayer. I've really enjoyed at the beginning of Roger in a Year, he did a big Lectio section on a few of the episodes, and I really enjoyed praying with that. The visualization helps me, and also just like alternating. True Lectio, you read it like 3 or 4 times, right? But just meditating with Scripture, you can read through it and put yourself in one person's shoes. You can read through it, put yourself in another person's shoes. We were doing this at Bible study the other day with Alex. We were doing the passage where Jesus is in the crowd. This is Mark chapter 5, verse 27 on, 21 on, or something like that. It's where Jesus is in the crowd and the lady touches his clothes and is healed from the hemorrhages, and Jairus' daughter. And so like that whole story has 6 perspectives to go from. So I love Lectio and love doing meditative prayer with Scripture because it allows me to kind of get into all these different areas of thought of the story.
Yeah.
I like doing it in a group sometimes too, with several people because, at the end for the last reading, I always like it when it's so we'll have a couple different people read through it out loud. That way everybody kind of gets it. I like having that ability to hear other people read it because they'll emphasize some words and those will maybe stick out more. Mm-hmm. There may be more emotion conveyed in a certain part. And so that kind of gives your brain a chance to process all the words and everything that's happening. So I like that. And then I like closing with just silent read. Just silent read through. I love Lectio. I think it's great. We used to do it my freshman year of high school with my religion teacher. He would do it every Friday. And it would just be a Lectio class every Friday. So we would just spend the whole 45 minutes doing a Lectio, and it was awesome. One of the coolest experiences I had at St. Bernard was that. And it was interesting because I didn't really get a chance to have that personal prayer connection with my class, and that kind of like, in a sense, it forced it, but it also encouraged it, and it was great. So that was awesome. So if you have the time, really do try to pray the Lectio. I've done it with my discipleship group if we have extra time at the end, and it's great. And I know they liked it. So
Yeah, and one of the best parts about it, more interesting parts about it, is you have to try to sort through your thoughts to figure out, what is God telling me through my thoughts? What is he telling me through the scriptures? What thoughts are from God? What thoughts are not from God? Which is why my answer was yes to our question from earlier, because we can understand God more through our own thoughts and deciphering them and whether they're good thoughts.
he's
So yeah.
ready to get into that question.
know.
He's
It's
excited. It's like seeping through his mouth.
So yeah, the Lectio Divina, pretty cool. Also, just meditation in general, great stuff. Just saying, cool. Anyways, we're gonna move on to our Shepherd of the Week, which came from our compatriot, Mr. Evan Hebert. I will say it, and then he will describe it. Our Shepherd of the Week for this week is our first. I believe this is our first organization/group. Well, actually, did we do the Alabama football team as Shepherd of the Week that one
You
week?
shepherd of the
We
week.
did.
It's Alabama football.
There's a good reasoning. We don't need to talk about it now.
Andy DeBree did have
We
a
did.
shepherd.
Okay, so not the first, but this is another organization. It is the Colby, as in St. Maximilian Kolbe, Prison Ministry. Evan,
Yeah.
tell us
it
what
away,
that's all
yeah.
about.
Yeah, so Colby Prison Ministry is, I think, a pretty prevalent retreat style. I know my home parish does this, but basically, Colby retreats take a group of men from the parish, right? Like our father's ages, more, 18 plus, 21 plus, because you have to be able to go into a prison. But they go into prisons and hold retreats for prisoners who, may have no contact with Christ, may be Catholic, but basically just you go in and you have a retreat experience in prison. And so the reason I bring this up is because my dad went on his first Colby retreat. One of his buddies had been working on him for years to try to get him to go, and I think finally kind of wore him down. And another friend also told him, like, hey, you should go, I'm leading it this year, whatever. But the reason I picked the Shepherd of the Week as Colby Ministries is because he came back and we're talking on the phone last night, and his big thing was that you don't understand these people until you're in this setting with them. And he said the most sad thing, or maybe the most enlightening thing, was like most of these guys just like hadn't had a hug in, like, some of them in like 25 years, right? And so, oftentimes he said it was just like people who wanted to talk, or like people who just wanted you to have a meal with them and sit down and just be, because you can't be a normal human in prison. But just, they're doing fantastic work. It's a fantastic organization. I'm confident that it impacts lives. I know, I've heard 100 stories of how it's impacted the people who have gone on the retreats, of how it's impacted the people in prison who are also on the retreat. But just the wide-ranging impact and the good that I've heard come of it gives it enough reason to be our Shepherd of the Week this week.
I think prison ministry is very overlooked as a whole, just in general. It's interesting. Very strange story how this all worked out, but I'm going to link it, and so just follow along. But Brandon Lake and Jelly Roll just collabed on a song. Strangest collaboration
You're right.
ever
This
seen.
is starting out weird.
Yes, it is. But there's a reason for this. So it's interesting, Jelly Roll's a country artist, and he's Christian, but I wouldn't say he's 100% always outright like trying to proclaim it. Like, it's just not like Christian music isn't his niche. But he talks about God in some of his songs, and it's neat. And so it was very unexpected when I heard this collaboration, but my brain immediately went back to this story that I heard about Jelly Roll recently. He did a pop-up show in one of the prisons local to his area that he was in, and he played for all of them. And while he was there, apparently some of the guys in the prison formed this group, and they were their own little Christian band. And it was a really neat story. They wrote originals, and he brought them up onto his next concert, and they sang an original song that they wrote about God, and Jelly Roll sang it with them, and it was so cool. I was like, this is such a neat experience. Like, I feel like people often forget about the people that have gone to jail and kind of just are like, oh, they're in jail. They're like, it's just, they're there, right? And they forget that these are still human beings, and they're still, like, some of them still actively pursue the Lord. And so it was really neat to see that and see them perform on stage for everybody talking about God. And so I thought that collaboration was really awesome. And so that's kind of where my brain went to with that. So that story really moved me. I think prison ministry stories really do get to me. I know here at Saban they have the Come to Jail With Me program.
The verb kind.
Is it what? It kind.
Is the name of it. The verb kind is the program, yeah.
Yes, and I think that's a really neat program. I wish we try to get involved, but we're not 21 yet.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. If you're interested in prison ministry, most places do prison ministry. The only thing I will say is that you do have a 21 plus restriction because
you are going to prison.
Yeah, you're going to prison. So there's some element of danger.
Yes.
So
and when I think about it now that I'm listening to you guys, it's like you have this incredible crop of land that you could plant amazing seeds and see amazing plants come up, but it's just like a far walk to get there. And that's kind of what prison ministry seems like to me. It's an absolutely amazing place to minister to people. Think about it. A lot of us in our lives, when we're trying to minister to people, they have so many distractions going on in their lives. They have so many things that they have to do and to think about. How do I... There's so many things going on in their mind. If you go to a prison, there's a lot of times those dudes don't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there, but we try to just put them off. Like, oh, that's a far walk away. There's that great crop of land, but I don't feel like going over there and putting in the effort to, get some, to plant seeds there. But if we just simply walk over there, there are so many people I can only imagine at prisons that their souls are just longing and thirsting to just have seeds planted in them. And there can be some amazing plants come out of there. But if you think about it, how awesome would it be? You just go to a prison and you're able to impact a couple people. They're going to want to impact other people. And they have so many people inside the prison that they can impact. Yeah, I think this... we try to join the verb kind as we talked about. Definitely going to try to continue to pursue that because, guys, I think this is a great ministry idea that we're not coming up with or creating, but trying to create a little bit more fire. But I think it's a great opportunity. So definitely overlooked, but definitely needs it. Yeah. Moving on to our final thoughts of this episode. Evan, we know you have your great search talk coming up next week. Just give us a little tidbit of your final thoughts here on this quote. The quote, of course, once again, I'll repeat, God never tires of forgiving us. We are the ones who tire of seeking his mercy.
And let's keep it pretty brief because this is, we've talked for quite a minute. And so I think we're going to talk about it more when we get to
we are encroaching upon Pints territory. I just think we have to keep in mind that we're fallible and that we're going to fail. And that, we just have to ask God for his strength as well, right? Just, even though it seems silly, ask God for the strength to keep praying. And ask God for the strength to keep striving to have a relationship with him.
For me, I don't want anything I say to be heresy, so I apologize if it is. But don't lose sight.
Just getting so close to that borderline.
I know. Don't lose sight of that empathy for Christ. Because I think that really distracts us from seeking his mercy. When you can't try to understand and try to connect with that, I think you do lose sight of that. And so I think in order to regain that, rebuild that, try to, prayer is such a good way to continue wanting to seek Christ. So good prayer, strong prayer, and prayer from the heart really is going to help.
And I think with that empathy part, you got to just sit there and you have empathy, and understand, shoot, man, this dude flipping died for me.
Yeah.
If I'm not going to understand that, and I know take advantage can have a negative connotation, but taking advantage of Christ's passion is the right way to use, because he did it for us. He understand what he did and continue to come back with that mercy, because if not, then he did it all for naught. So to go back on your empathy point, my final point, this quote from St. Dominic, A man who governs his passions is master of the world. We must either rule them or be ruled by them. It is better to be the hammer than the anvil. You might be wondering, where is this coming from? Well, we started this episode with our psychology question, talking about bodily reactions and emotions. As human beings, when we mess up, when we think about confession and going and seeking God's mercy, we can have bodily reactions come up, we can have emotions come up that absolutely push us away from that. And that is why we need self-mastery. And this is basically one of the best things that we as human beings can have. We have to pray for it, we have to work, we have to strive for it in so many ways. Self-discipline, self-mastery, being able to make logical decisions over our emotion. Whether that is having empathy for Christ, being able to logically say, okay, I understand what God did for me, I'm going to seek out his mercy. Even though our emotions can feel completely different. Whether it's going to confession and having fear, being able to step over that fear and say, it doesn't matter. I've got to be more than that. I know that I need this. So self-mastery, self-discipline, there's so many ways that we could talk about that and so many ways for you to work on your self-discipline. Self-discipline, self-mastery. It is better to be the hammer than the anvil. Thank you all for watching. This has been the Lost Sheep Podcast episode number 40. We'll be back next week. Have a great week, everybody, and God bless.